Hello, everyone. I am Diego Espinosa, and I'm the assistant manager at MediaLex here, and you're listening to WLXU 93.9 LFM in Lexington, Kentucky. I am here once more with Jennifer Reynolds, who is the council member for District 11th in Lexington, Kentucky. And she's here to give us an update on what the council has been doing. Thank you very much for being with us again.
As always, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
Of course. Now, let's get this started. Why are you here? What do you want to tell us?
Well, there's always a lot going on with council. We're in session for a lot of the weeks out of the year, but we are starting the budget process right now. Once again, we've been meeting with council members to define our priorities, and then we met with the administration to go over joint priorities, kind of talk about an overall theme of what the budget might look like this year. So that's one thing that we're working on. And then, as you know, we kind of had a big storm that affected all of us recently. And unfortunately, kids were out of school for 2 weeks, and my son included. I think he was actually getting tired of playing video games and watching TV, which says something. A lot of folks have, asked questions about that response. So last year, we approved more than $2 million to go towards making sure that we had more trucks and more folks available to respond to our storms. And then this year, we got hit really hard with another storm that also included a lot of ice, which prevented myself included from, easily clearing our driveways, our sidewalks, our porches. They were just frozen. And I think that, the council is not involved in the nitty gritty of having the crews go out and plow or treat. So just want to make that clear. A lot of folks contact us during the storm and think that we have power to go out and clear their street. And really we don't. So we did get a lot of messages, though. We do have a power to do an oversight, review of what happened, what worked, what didn't work, and also to approve budgets and things like that in the future that would have a better response. What my office did was eventually take the names of roads that folks were especially concerned about that hadn't been cleared after a long while, and we passed those on to street and roads as priorities in our districts. We also encouraged everyone to call 311 if they couldn't get out, so that the streets and roads had a record of that. The way that our system has been set up has been a ranked street system. So roads go on a rank. We have moved up to 5 different rankings, and theoretically, they're cleared in that order, as well as bus routes being taken into consideration as priorities. But we saw that after a long period of time, a lot of those streets had not been cleared. And then obviously unranked streets were not cleared. So that's why we started taking names and passing them on to streets and roads and saying, hey, these folks can't get out. They're still stuck. Can you help? We also had temperatures, low, cold temperatures combined with the ice that just made it really tricky. So what's going to happen is there's going to be an after action review, and the Environmental Quality and Public Works is going to oversee that. They're going to look at what worked, what didn't work, what is working in other cities that have similar types of storms like last year and this year that were snow and ice. What can we take from them? Do we need to scrap our whole ranked system and start over? What do we need to do to make sure that we have a better response in the future? So I appreciate that that's happening. I know council will be interested to get those results and then give their feedback about what we were seeing. It's a tricky thing because I always tell people, yes, we want a quick response. Yes, we want to be able to get out, but it is costly. And every time that a city like ours that could get a lot of snow and ice one year, they could get no snow and ice the next year, we're paying to be prepared for the worst. And obviously we need to be better prepared. That's true. We do. But are we willing to spend the money to be as prepared as a more northern city, let's say? I don't think Lexington wants to do that. So we have to find that right balance that gets our roads cleared faster, but doesn't require us to constantly be spending millions and millions of dollars for a response or to be prepared for a response. So it's a tricky thing. Obviously, council members asked over an hour's worth of questions to the commissioner after the storm about what we were hearing. Appreciate the commissioner's response and willing to answer all of those questions. Yeah, the city needs to do a better job.
And it is then unpractical and maybe impossible to have all the equipment necessary to plow and de-ice every single street in the city.
Correct. Yeah, that would be incredible price tag just even to hire the staff to be able to do that, especially with the ice and how long it took to clear the ice. We're never going to have a system that clears every single road every time. There's too many miles in the city, and most cities don't do that. But that's kind of the expectation that people have, right? Because they want to get out easily on their street. And if the snow or the ice sticks around longer than expected, they want to get out. And I totally understand that. But there's not really a world that we live in where we could actually clear every single street.
And I wonder if people, as a neighborhood, can get together and maybe do some preventive treatments to the roads or maybe clear them themselves.
That is not allowed because it's a public road, and so if they were to use something that could damage it or destroy it in some way, that's not allowed. You are obviously supposed to clear your own sidewalk. That's the homeowner's responsibility. The mayor suspended the implementation of holding folks accountable for that this time because it was just so hard to do, which I appreciated. There are a few streets in the city that are privately owned, and some of them are in my district, and I've come across that. If your street is privately owned, then yes, you can do whatever you want to clear that street and work together on that. But unfortunately, yeah, for the public roads, we don't want people putting down some sort of treatment and then it ruin the cement or something.
And at the same time, is my last question before we move on. There were some businesses that were affected by the plowing, since the plowing pushes the ice towards the sidewalks, and they block the entrance to their parking lots. And another one is that I, as a bus user, being in the bus stop, at least the one here on Main Street, it was just a block of ice, and I will have to either wait on the road or holding onto the bus sign to not slip.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I think when you're talking about clearing a lot of snow, there's not a lot of options for the plowing people because when you're doing that, it is shoving it off to the side. That was another reason why they didn't implement the ordinance with the clearing the sidewalks, because there was a lot of snow piled up on the sidewalks. And unfortunately, it does block some things. That's why we tell people not to park on the streets before these storms. And, maybe there's something that can be done to help improve that. I'm not sure. I know we learned, we have to do better at clearing the turn lanes and intersections. Those were things that came later. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with that much snow, there's just not a way to perfectly place it.
All right. Well, let's move on from this subject. And what else has the council been doing?
Well, the council is approving a new process for determining the urban service area expansion. So on the 12th, we unanimously approved an ordinance that will change how Lexington expands the urban service area. So every time it comes up that we talk about, do we expand the urban service area? Do we not? We haven't really had a good blueprint in how to look at that and how to do that. So now the Lexington Preservation and Growth Management Program is establishing a new data-driven process. And that will look at 5-year growth trends, to estimate residential needs and vacant land review within the current urban service area. This is important because in the past, when we've looked at do we expand or not expand, we haven't had a metrical way of looking at that. It's always been kind of, well, maybe it would be good because of this, maybe it would be bad because of this, but this is going to make us really look at data. And the plan will also allow for economic development expansions outside of the regular cycle review, so that if something comes along and this is a really good economic boost to the city, it could be considered. So before, we would make decisions based on the comprehensive plan every 5 years, and that had become really divisive. So I think that this plan is going to help us really evaluate better what we're including in the expansion area.
Have there been any people opposed to what this is going to entail?
I think anytime you talk about the urban service boundary, you're going to get people that are opposed. It's mostly been in the semantics or the details of how we work it out. And I don't think there's a perfect way of doing this, but I feel like what we've landed on is fairly good. We'll be looking at growth trends reports. After Planning Commission has reviewed recommendations, council will review those recommendations. There'll be a vacant land review, and council will be looking into that as well. And I think that's important to really hone in on what land we actually have that's vacant and what isn't. And then there'll be proposals that will come forward to say we want to be in the expansion area. And then a subcommittee will evaluate those proposals and recommendations to the Planning Commission. And then the Planning Commission will vote on whether those areas should be added to the urban service area. And then, we will allocate funds for a master plan that will help guide that development. So I think when we're looking at special economic development proposals that are outside of the regular planning, those proposals have to be under 250 acres, and they have to include a development plan. And then a minimum of 10 council members have to vote to initiate a zone change for that proposal. I think overall it's a good plan. There's a few things here and there that folks wanted us to change. We did make some amendments, but I think overall it's really helpful.
Well, I guess that's progress, right?
I think so. I really do. And I applaud, Vice Mayor Wu and Councilmember Sheehan for really spearheading this. Every time we look at expansion, it just gets super tricky. So it's nice to have something in place. Once again, I'm not saying it's perfect, but something that guides our planning.
Yeah, and at least you will have some numbers behind it to maybe try and explain people why you're making those decisions.
Exactly. It gives proof of, we actually only have a few acres available inside the boundary, so we need more outside of it. Or, you know what, we have a lot more acres available inside. We don't need to expand. Some sort of metrical way of looking at it. So I think it'll be helpful.
All right. Well, now let's go into another subject. Let's talk about solar panels now.
Oh my, that's turned into a hot topic here in Lexington. So last week at the work session, we were going to vote on a Haley Pike solar lease for our old Haley Pike landfill. And that was an agreement with the Social Impact Solar Edel and Renewables for a solar project on that property. It includes landfill property and then kind of brown area around it. After talking about it, the vote was postponed due to some concerns about the lease rate. So we had been told it was going to be 85 per acre and community benefits of 125 per megawatt. But then we found out, that a 2024 study estimated that the lease could be 550 to 850 per acre. And the city's solar zoning ordinance suggests 750 per megawatt for community benefits. So there was just some discrepancy discrepancy in the numbers, and some of the council members were not sure they were comfortable with the way it was currently being proposed. So this 67.4 megawatt facility would cover about 357 acres and produce enough electricity for over 5,000 homes. So I think today we are supposed to, in work session, get some updated numbers and look at voting on that again. Edelman's company is saying that they need to begin construction by July to qualify for federal tax credits that are being sunset by recent federal legislation, but council members are a little hesitant to, just rush into things due to that reason. So they're saying that this was a unsolicited bid that the company sent to the city, and the Public Works and Environmental Quality and Public Works Committee, we looked at this proposal back or in November. I don't serve on that committee, but I attend the meetings. All that to say, there's just some confusion and maybe disagreement about how much money the city should make off of this deal, if that makes sense.
Yes, and according to Edelman Renewables, by when do they need to have this decision in order to begin construction?
July.
So they need to have the decision by July.
Before July to be able to be shovel ready in July.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when do you expect to be making a decision?
So today we're looking at it again. Our vote from last work session was to postpone to a time certain to this week's work session. So we're supposed to pick it up again today. I don't know if there will be more amendments or changes at work session today.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's keep moving forward since time is of the essence. Why don't you talk about this project or initiative that you had with carbon monoxide?
Yes. Well, unfortunately, there was a large tragedy in my district in July of this past year where 11 people went to the hospital and one person died due to carbon monoxide poisoning in an apartment complex. This instance really shook me and said, what is happening that it would come to that point. There was a pipe that was faulty that the landlord should have fixed and didn't, and it was leaking carbon monoxide into all of the apartment units. None of the apartment units had a carbon monoxide detector, so not only were they being failed by the landlord, they were being failed because they didn't have a detector to tell them that there was a problem. So as I started digging into the issue, I realized that our current code says that any building newer than 2011 has to have a carbon monoxide detector, just like it has to have smoke detectors. But buildings built before 2011 were exempt from having carbon monoxide detectors. And just to be clear, we're talking about buildings that have potential carbon monoxide sources like furnaces, stoves, water heaters, generators, fireplaces, and attached garages. If you have all electric appliances and you don't have an attached garage, you don't need a carbon monoxide detector. But a lot of these buildings built before 2011 obviously have those things. And so they have to have smoke alarms, but they have not had to have a carbon monoxide detector. So this ordinance just works with the fire marshal's office and code enforcement. And the fire marshal handles commercial buildings and code handles residential properties. And basically, there are two ordinances updating the code. So just this has the full support of the fire department, public safety, of code enforcement. I've spoken with a lot of realtors. I've spoken with the state's building inspection, and I think a lot of folks are really on board with this. It's just adding one extra detector per unit, and it could save lives.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be too much of a problem just to add one detector.
Right. They can cost $20. You can plug it in. You can put it on your floor. And like I said, it could help save lives. I actually was meeting with an organization recently, and the chair of the board told me that her fireplace broke, her gas fireplace, and it was leaking gas into the house. And if it wasn't for her carbon monoxide detector, they could have died. So, like I said, this saves lives. Last year, we had multiple instances of people that had carbon monoxide poisoning. So it's a small fix, but like I said, if it saves one life, then it will be worth it. It will be read out today in work session to move to the full council. It passed the Social Services and Public Safety Committee.
We are almost out of time, and I just really want to quickly talk about the upcoming mayoral election. And as somebody who's been in Lexington for very, very little time, I have no idea how this works. And so why don't you explain to me, explain to the public what they need to know?
Yeah, so every 4 years, there is a mayoral race and a council at large race. The council at large serves for 4 years as well as the mayor. And every 2 years, there is a regular council, district council race. So every 4 years, a lot of folks are up for election. The term limits that we have in Lexington are 12 consecutive years. That's for mayor, council at large, and district council. So you can only serve in one role for a consecutive 12 years. So Mayor Gorton is running for her third term, which is very rare in Lexington. And then after that, she would be termed out. There are 6 other candidates running against Mayor Gorton. And that means that they will have a primary. And the primary is on May 19th. And then there's council at large. And there are 6 candidates for council at large. There are 3 council at large seats and 6 candidates. That means they don't have a primary because there's 2 candidates per seat. So they will only be voted on November 3rd. Councilmember Ellinger is not running again. So there will be 1 seat that is not being vied for by an incumbent because there's only 2 incumbents for 3 seats. So that will be on November 3rd. And then in the district races, there are only a few districts that have an incumbent running against somebody else. The other incumbents are uncontested. So we have District 5. There will be 3 candidates, which means they will have a primary on May 19th. And then the other district races that have competition, there's 2 new candidates for District 3. There's 2 candidates for District 4, 2 new candidates for District 6, 2 candidates for District 8, and 2 candidates for District 9. And then there are 2 candidates running for my seat since I am not running again. So that is how that shapes up.
Yeah, a lot of decisions, actually. So a few votes for the primary. There's only a primary when there's more than 2 candidates running for the same position.
Correct.
And then you go to the
general election.
The general election in November, where it's also the midterms, right? It's the same day.
It's the same day for all voting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's very insightful for me, and I hope it's also insightful for everybody who's listening. And just be aware that you have people to vote for. Please do your research and find who's the best candidate for you.
That's right.
All right. Our time is up. We really need to wrap things up. And why don't you tell us how to contact your office and maybe how to find out more about what government is doing?
Yeah, so you can always go to lexingtonky.gov, and there you can find our meetings online and information. You can find council members' information, etc. To contact my office, you can go to jreynolds@lexingtonky.gov. You can also find me on Facebook at Lexington's 11th. And my phone number for my office is 859-280-8248.
Fantastic. Well, thank you once more for being with us and giving us all of this information. And I hope to see you next month for another update.
Sounds good. Thanks, Diego.
And don't forget that you're listening to Media Lex Radio, WLXU 93.9.